In the quiet town of Eldwood, nestled in the rolling hills of northern Alabama, the Rusty Kettle Cafe stood as a beacon of warmth against the backdrop of a fading industrial past. The town, once a hub for textile mills, now clung to its charm with weathered brick storefronts, magnolia trees lining cracked sidewalks, and a single stoplight that blinked red more out of habit than necessity. At 35, Grace Holloway managed the cafe with a steady hand, her presence a quiet anchor for the community just 20 minutes from Camp Hollow, a sprawling army base known for its artillery training grounds. Grace wasn't the kind of woman who demanded attention. With her chestnut hair often tied back in a loose bun, hazel eyes that carried a hint of melancholy, and a wardrobe of faded denim and plaid shirts, she blended into the everyday hum of Eldwood. But those who knew her, really knew her, saw the steel beneath her soft exterior. 6 years ago, her life had unraveled when her fiancé, Corporal Daniel Holloway, was killed by a roadside bomb in the deserts of Syria. He'd been a mechanic with the 101st Airborne, a man who could fix anything with a wrench and a smile. His death left Grace with a hollow ache, but also a resolve to create something meaningful. The Rusty Kettle became that something, a place where stories were shared, not judged, and where the weight of war could be set down, if only for a moment. The cafe itself was unpretentious. No lattes or avocado toast graced the menu, just strong black coffee brewed in dented pots, buttery cornbread, and a chalkboard listing daily specials in Grace's looping handwriting. The walls were adorned with faded photographs of Eldwood's past. Mill workers in overalls, a 1940s parade, and a snapshot of Daniel leaning against an old oak, his army cap tilted rakishly. But the heart of the Rusty Kettle was Grace. She remembered every regular's order. Mr. Jenkins liked his coffee with a splash of cream, Mrs. Clara preferred hers black with a sugar cube, and she kept a ledger of deployment dates and birthdays behind the counter. For the veterans who drifted in, she offered more than coffee. She offered silence when words failed, a nod when tears threatened, and a chair for their service dogs without a second thought. Every Tuesday at 9 a.m., Grace hosted what had grown into a local ritual. Veterans Haven. It began with just a handful: her Uncle Hank, a grizzled Korean War vet who'd lost a leg to frostbite; Miriam, a Desert Storm medic with a dry wit; and Old Tom, a World War II sailor who spoke only through his harmonica. Over time, the circle expanded to include younger faces: a Gulf War tank commander, an Iraq War sniper, a female Afghan vet with a prosthetic leg. Grace opened each session with the same gentle words: "This is a place to rest, not to prove. You're seen here." The veterans nodded, their shoulders loosening as they sipped coffee and traded tales, some light, some shadowed, some too raw to voice aloud. Grace's own story was a whispered legend in Eldwood. After Daniel's death, she poured her grief into the cafe, transforming it from a struggling diner into a sanctuary. She never remarried, never sought the spotlight, but her quiet dedication earned her a reverence that transcended age or rank. Veterans called her Miss Grace with a sincerity that made her blush, and the town's teenagers held doors open without prompting. Even Mayor Pritchard, a stout man with a penchant for long-winded speeches, dropped by monthly to thank her for keeping Eldwood's spirit alive. But for Grace, it was never about praise. It was about the mission, the unspoken one of honoring those who'd served, of holding space for their pain. She'd slip an extra biscuit to a vet too proud to ask, check on a soldier staring blankly out the window, and let a service dog nap under a table without batting an eye. It wasn't policy, it was instinct, born of love and loss. That Tuesday morning, the air carried a crispness that hinted at the approaching fall, the kind of day where sunlight danced on the cafe's worn wooden floors. Grace was behind the counter, rolling up her sleeves as she prepared the first pot of coffee for Veterans Haven. The bell above the door jingled, and in walked Eli Grayson, a wiry 60-year-old ex-ranger with a graying beard and a limp from a parachute mishap. Beside him trotted Luna, his golden retriever service dog, her vest emblazoned with "Service Dog, Do Not Pet" in bold letters. Grace gave Eli a warm nod. "Corner tables open, Eli. Fresh pots brewing." Eli murmured a thanks and guided Luna to the far end, where sunlight streamed through the window. The cafe filled with the familiar rhythm of chatter and clinking mugs as the veterans settled in. Then the door swung open with a sharp creak, and a man in a crisp gray suit stepped inside, clipboard in hand and a scowl etched on his face. His name tag read, Victor Hale, County Health Inspector. Grace's stomach tightened. She hadn't been notified of an inspection. "Can I help you?" she asked, her tone polite but firm. "Routine inspection," Hale replied, his voice clipped. He moved through the cafe like a predator, tapping counters, peering into the kitchen, and jotting notes with a pen that clicked incessantly. Then he froze, his gaze locking on Luna. That dog, he barked, pointing. It's a health code violation. No animals allowed where food is served. Heads turned. The room fell silent. Grace stepped forward, keeping her voice steady. Luna's a registered service dog. State law allows her presence under the ADA. Hale's lips curled. I don't care about vests or laws. That animal sheds. It's a hazard. Remove it, or I'll shut this place down. His eyes scanned the room, daring anyone to challenge him. Eli's hand tightened on his mug, his jaw clenching, but Luna remained still, her eyes fixed on him. Grace took a deep breath, feeling the weight of the moment. I won't ask a veteran to leave, and I won't ask his service dog to go. You can write your report, but you'll do it knowing you tried to shame a man who gave years to this country. Hale's face reddened. A murmur rippled through the cafe, and someone muttered, she's right. But before Hale could retort, the door opened again, revealing Carla Monroe, the Rusty Kettle's district manager, her arms crossed and her expression thunderous. She'd arrived for a surprise audit and caught the exchange. Grace Holloway, Carla said, her voice cold as steel. You've just violated health regulations in front of an inspector. You're fired. Pack your things. The room gasped. A spoon clattered to the floor. Eli half rose, stunned, while Grace stood motionless for a heartbeat. Then she scanned the cafe, Eli, Luna, the chalkboard proclaiming Veterans Haven, free coffee, and offered a faint smile. With trembling hands, she untied her apron, folded it neatly, and placed it on the counter. Turning to Mia, the young barista, she whispered, make sure Eli gets his refill. Then she walked out into the morning light, her step steady despite the ache in her chest. Unbeknownst to her, a customer had recorded the scene. As Grace sat in her truck, keys in hand but engine off, the video began to spread across social media, igniting a firestorm. Within an hour, the Rusty Kettle's parking lot rumbled with the arrival of 3 Army Humvees, their green hulls gleaming under the sun. Out stepped Colonel Amos Whitaker, a broad-shouldered man in dress greens, his chest adorned with ribbons from a 30-year career, including a Silver Star earned in Iraq. He'd once been saved by a medic under Eli's command during a brutal ambush. The cafe fell silent as Colonel Whitaker entered, his boots echoing on the wooden floor. He stopped before Mia, who stood frozen behind the counter. Where's Grace Holloway? He asked, his voice resonant but calm. She was fired, Mia stammered. For standing up for Eli and Luna. Whitaker's jaw tightened. That woman built a haven for my men when the VA couldn't. She gave Eli back his dignity when the world forgot him. He turned to the veterans. Who saw it happen? Hands rose, and a young vet named Jared pulled out his phone, replaying the video. Whitaker watched, his expression hardening. He stepped outside and signaled the Humvees. 2 soldiers removed the corporate logo from the wall, replacing it with a hand-painted sign. Grace's Haven. Honor served daily. When Carla protested, Whitaker cut her off. You made your choice. Now we make ours. Minutes later, Mia's phone buzzed with a message from Camp Hollow. Grace Holloway requested at headquarters. Immediate. Eli exhaled, his eyes wide, as the cafe buzzed with a new energy. Grace sat in her truck, replaying the morning's events. The firing stung, but the summons from Camp Hollow puzzled her. She turned the ignition and drove toward the base, her mind a whirl of uncertainty. At the gate, a guard waved her through, and she parked before the administration building, its flag-lined facade intimidating yet familiar from her days with Daniel. Colonel Whitaker met her at the door, his khaki uniform crisp. His demeanor warm yet commanding. Grace, he said, shaking her hand. Thanks for coming. Follow me. He led her to a room labeled Veteran Resilience Hub, where folding chairs and unpacked boxes hinted at a project in its infancy. A young staffer adjusted a therapy mat, while another unpacked donated weights. This is a new initiative, Whitaker explained. We've struggled to find someone who gets veterans, not from a textbook, but from the soul. That's you. Grace frowned. I'm no counselor. I just poured coffee. You built a sanctuary, Whitaker countered. What you did today, that was leadership. From the back, a voice called, Is that her? A woman in her late 20s, Tara Jennings, emerged, her arms bearing burn scars from an IED blast in Afghanistan. Beside her was Max, a Labrador puppy in training, his vest bright red. I saw your video, Tara said shyly. I haven't been to a public place since I got back, but I'd try yours. Grace's breath caught. Whitaker smiled. We want you to direct this hub. Shape it. You know what works: community, respect, routine. She thought of Eli, Luna, the veterans who'd found solace at the Rusty Kettle. I'll do it, she said softly. That night, Grace stood in the empty hub, pinning a photo of Daniel to the wall, no frame, just memory. Word spread quickly. By week's end, the Veteran Resilience Hub buzzed with life. Veterans long absent from base returned, young soldiers brought hesitant families, and the Eldwood Echo ran a headline, "From Cafe to Command, Grace Holloway's New Mission." Grace kept it simple, no consultants, just attentiveness. She posted a whiteboard, "Need a ride? Need a listener?" Dogs curled under tables, and her notebook grew with new names. Tara liked chamomile tea. Don't ask Jared about July 4th. Some days were silent, some heavy, but a healing space emerged where pain was shared, not hidden. Eli visited often, Luna settling into her corner. Tara sketched dogs and homecomings, finding her voice. Mia brought coffee and laughter every Friday, becoming Grace's unofficial advisor. But challenges arose. Auditors arrived, skeptical of Grace's lack of credentials. "What qualifies you?" when asked. "Consistency and kindness," she replied. A week later, the hub was flagged for national expansion. Whitaker called it a win. Grace called it humbling. One afternoon, she returned to the rusty kettle. Mia teased, "You're famous now," sliding her a mug. Photos of vets lined the walls, and a new sign read, "Grace's Corner, no one sits alone." At a veteran fundraiser, Grace spoke without notes. "I didn't plan a program. I just wouldn't turn out a man and his dog." Applause erupted, and Eli saluted from the back. Back at the hub, she added photos to the wall, one of the fundraiser crowd, another of Daniel with a soldier from years ago, writing, "Honor grows where kindness is consistent." A young vet asked, "Is this for people like us?" Grace smiled. "For all of us." 3 weeks later, a Department of Defense letter nominated her for the National Civilian Commendation. At the Veterans Advocacy Conference in Washington, she spoke, "I served coffee, listened. Veterans needed presence, not fixes. I was fired for a dog, but it was about dignity." Applause roared. Outside, an old soldier gave her a photo of Daniel and himself, a memory of kindness. Back in Eldwood, the town celebrated, but Grace returned to the hub. In its quiet, she found her legacy, not in medals but in the lives she touched.